All right, the offseason in Indiana. We are going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the Pacers offseason. You can find the written portion on ESPN.com, one document this year, and you can find the Pacers front office priorities, what to watch, state of the roster, extension candidates, finances, team needs, draft assets. You can find that all on the Indiana Pacers, along with the teams that have been eliminated and that are not in the postseason. The offseason has begun in Indiana. I would say, based on where this team was last year at the trade deadline, where they were this offseason with the Malcolm Brogdon trade, to have a chance to compete for a spot in the play-in, and certainly injuries and basically pulling back the reins a little bit. Indiana kind of took a big picture approach to this group. This is they're in a kind of a similar boat to where Utah is, where you're trying to retool but not hit rock bottom where you're developing bad habits. Here's a team, and we're going to go into the roster in a bit. You've got you basically control the top half of the draft. You've got 3 first-round picks, and we'll know a little bit more whether it will be 7 or 8 going into the lottery. They're tied right now with the Wizards. Coin flip to determine. You've got either 25th or 26th pick. That's via Cleveland. That's from the Karis LeVert trade. And you've got the 29th pick, which is from Boston. That's from the Brogdon trade. And then you have either pick 32 or 33, which basically is a late first round pick. So you've got 4 potentially in the top 33. You've got a 6.8 chance at drafting number 1. They are in good shape. I think I heard Rick Carlisle, their head coach, said you've got to nail the draft, right? I mean, when you're in a situation like Indiana, and you last year drafted Benedict Mathurin, and you found Andrew Nembhard in I think he was the first pick in the second round, and you already had Tyrese Halliburton, and you signed Miles Turner to that extension. You've got Buddy Hield on an expiring. You got a nice group of bench players, number 1 in the bench, led by T.J. McConnell. You've got to nail the draft. As I've said in these videos before, cap space is overrated unless you're going to do a Turner renegotiation and extension, or you're going to kind of find these fringe police $7 to $8 million guys. The Pacers are not in a position to go out and spend $30 million on one player. Yes, we saw it last year with DeAndre Ayton. That's kind of a little bit of a different situation here. But for me, for Indiana, it starts with the draft. Yeah, as you can see behind me, there are resources to build a roster. The draft, certainly with their 2 young players, Halliburton and Mathurin. I mean, Halliburton, listen, he was an all-star this year. You could see when he played, this team was at the very least a minimum a playing team here. When he got hurt, they kind of reverted back to towards this lottery team. I mean, the only player in league history to average 20, 10, and 40% on threes. Before January 11th, 5 games over 500, 14th in offensive efficiency. In the 11 games he missed, 1 in 10, 27th in offensive efficiency. There's a difference when he is on the court. I think the big question for me is that can Benedict Mathurin develop into that number 2 guy? Body of work, beginning of the season, he was on pace for you could say 6th man of the year, rookie of the year, and kind of reverted back to the pack. Thought he struggled since the second half of the season. Since the beginning of February, 12 points on 45% shooting, including 29% on threes. Everything has kind of come down. Is it him hitting the rookie wall? Bottom 10 among 135 players to attempt 300 jumpers. 30% or since February 1. He has struggled. How does that evolve when more minutes? For him playing more minutes, of course, when you play 82 games, it's a lot different than playing 35 games at University of Arizona. So I think that's kind of something to keep an eye on. Can he become that number 2 guy? And is Halliburton your number 1 guy, right? Is he a good number 1A, and then you need another guy? And that's where it comes back into the draft. Finding that player either with that top 10 pick, 6, 7, or 8. You take a quality over quantity approach and maybe move those 3 later picks, and maybe you can get into the teens. I think that's certainly something that you can keep an eye on. Halliburton's extension eligible. He will get a max contract. 5 years, 204. He'll join a league company, the only player, Paul George, on this roster. The big question will be all NBA language added in, likely. And that would increase from 204 to 245 if he earned all NBA 1, 2, or 3 for next season. That would bump up. Certainly, there's a trend of not adding a player option. I can see that trend continuing. I would not add a player option in the Tyrese Halliburton. That for me is I don't want to say non-starter, because you certainly want to lock him up, but you want to, it's a slippery slope, right? So since 2021, 7 have signed rookie max, with only 2, Luka and Trae Young, having a player option. The year before, yes, you had Donovan Mitchell, and you had Donovan Mitchell and Jason Tatum in that group, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, no. De'Aaron Fox, no. So there is precedent where you do not want to set that you're all of a sudden putting a player option, and all of a sudden a year from now, player wants out, and you start that timeline as far as where that goes. For me, as far as team needs, I think certainly clearing up power forward. It's been by committee this year. 7 different players have started, tied for the most. The committee of 7 ranked 24th in points, 28th in field goal percentage. We saw a list of different players. Isaiah Jackson. We saw Naismith. It's been a little bit of everything for Indiana as far as at the power forward position. So does that get addressed in the draft? Maybe free agency. As far as from a free agent standpoint, I mean, the only players that are free: O'Shea Brissett, George Hill, James Johnson, and your 2 two-way guys, Kendall Brown, Gabe York. So you basically bring back this group. You've got Hield on an expiring contract, top 10 in three-point percentage. Certainly there's value there as far as with Buddy Hield. Turner's on a really good deal. Your books are well managed. I like where Indiana is. Certainly being in the lottery, nobody wants to be in the lottery. But I do think there's some, the roster's got some sustainable success built in here based on your picks. As I mentioned, Halliburton, your bench, Mathurin, Turner. There's a lot to work with as far as shaping this. Like, you haven't hit that upside 35 wins and be like, we've got to tear this thing back down because we've been the 8 seed 3 or 4 years in a row. That's not the case. That's why Indiana took that step back a little bit. I wouldn't say step back, but that retooling when you started to move off LeVert and then you moved off Sabonis for Halliburton. So that's a little bit of the Pacers. You can go find it on ESPN.com. As far as the article, we've got this will be video 5 that we've got up on YouTube. We'll keep on the videos. We'll keep on rolling, and hopefully everybody has a great day out there.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.